this is Poehali, a channel where we discuss the intersection of disability, sexuality, and art. And today my guest is Ed Larkin. He's an actor and he made a history as the first virtual user to read a West End musical in the Little Big Things. Hello, Ed.
Hello, how you doing? Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming. Could you please tell some facts about yourself, where do you live, and could you please share about your disability as well and how it impacts your life?
Yeah, cool. So, my name's Ed. I live in the southwest. I live down in Devon, near a little village called Beer Alston, which is probably the closest kind of big city that's known about is probably Plymouth. So I'm kind of right down the bottom. So I live there and grew up here. And I was born with my disability. I've got diaplegic cerebral palsy, which affects kind of my lower half of my body. Have full sensation, but yeah, just have the inability to stand. Can weight bear a little bit if I'm kind of leaning on something. But yeah, full-time wheelchair user. And have cerebral palsy, and that was from birth. And I don't think it really. I mean, it does affect you, but I think because I was born with my disability, I think you grow up with not knowing anything else, so you kind of adapt, I guess, naturally, and you just kind of get on with life. So that's kind of always been my approach towards my disability, is just to kind of, obviously there are days where it's not so, but like try and be as positive as possible, and try and make your own opportunities, which is it's fun.
Yeah, that's true. I see what you mean. And when I first met you, like it was a month ago, it was at Nottingham Playhouse, where you gave beautiful, wonderful performance with Secret Sides of Us musical. Like it was the first public rehearsal, and yeah, you just did a wonderful job. And by the way, I did like the interview with co-creators as well, and you can see it in my previous video in my channel. But today, I want to focus more on the questions about how it is possible to perceive goals of becoming an actor with disability, because it seems like a bit challenge like right now. And could you please share like at what age you started to act, and when did it become your passion?
Right. So I started kind of by accident a little bit. I think I was 8 or 9, and it was from my parents, really. They were trying to find something for me to kind of do, like trying to find a hobby. I think they were a little bit like, we know that he just needs the push to like get out there and socialize a bit more. And I think they were like, if we can find him something he'll enjoy, then that might help. Later on in life, I found sport, and that was a big thing for me. But earlier on, that wasn't really a thing. And they were like, well, there's this after-school drama club on a Friday in the local town. Why don't we just take him and see if he likes it? And I just really enjoyed it. And it was like, I feel like I connect with it and just have fun with it. And I think it was the first time I felt like not too self-conscious or like about my wheelchair, because that age and a bit older, obviously growing up, you kind of become more aware of your disability. But going to those classes, I think it was like a bit of it was a bit of an outlet and kind of a time to forget about anything going on at home or my disability. So yeah, it was a super cool thing. And then from there, I just kind of kept progressing with it and really enjoyed it. Did it at school, ended up doing it for GCSEs, did it for A levels. I took a gap year then because I just didn't feel like I was ready to leave for university, but got a place at university studying acting, BA acting, down in Plymouth, and then took a gap year, and then started my university degree. And then from there, I got my agent, and it's kind of been pretty okay since, which has been super cool. So yeah, it's just been like a real natural progression, and I think I always, as soon as I started it, I kind of fell in love with it, and I'm very lucky that I get to call it my career, because I can't really see myself doing anything else, which is super cool. But yeah, it was kind of just a natural progression through school and education, and I just kind of fell in love with it from there, really.
Yeah, and about the West End musical, The Little Things. How did you feel like stepping into that role? What was the beginning?
So I think I felt, I mean, I would be lying if I didn't say I did feel quite apprehensive stepping into the role. It was my first professional credit for musical theatre. I've always enjoyed musical theatre. It's been a big passion of mine, like growing up when I used to go to the theatre with my family, like musicals was the first thing I saw. Um, so yeah, it was always a big passion. And I did like singing lessons for fun. With the same person who ran the drama group in the town. He also ran singing lessons, and I just enjoyed doing it. So I did that weekly after I was kind of like 10, and I just had fun with it and didn't really think much of it, but just enjoyed it. I actually auditioned for musical theatre at university. I got in, but I turned down the course because at the time I was thinking practically about my future and kind of my career, and I was like, I've never seen anyone who looks like me in musical theatre. So I was like, I'm going to generalize and study to be an actor just to increase my chances of working. So yeah, the fact that I got that through and heard about the show and they were interested in me and then eventually getting it was crazy because I just never expected me to do that, especially at the scale of West End. I didn't expect it. And then personally as well, like I think it did feel like a big feat because I was kind of my first attempt at testing myself professionally was at quite a big scale thing, and to lead it was like incredible, and I felt very honoured. But like it was scary to be like, we need you to be on it and as professional as you can be and lead the company. When it was my first gig doing it, so it was I would be lying if I didn't say I felt the pressure, but it was such a joy to be involved and yeah, I had the best time. It's incredible.
Yeah, you played Henry Fraser.
Yeah.
It's like the main character of
Mhm.
it. And it is a person who became disabled through
Yeah.
the story. And you have a very different disability. How
Mhm.
did you prepare to this role?
Yeah.
And what was it about you like to you like was it difficult to adjust some kind of sort of thing that you couldn't do or it was quite different?
Yeah, I think, well, when we started, um, I think they were looking for somebody. I mean, did an amazing job with like authentic casting and disability in that show. I think number one was they wanted a disabled performer, which is fantastic. I think they knew that potentially someone with Henry's injuries, it might have been hard to find somebody who could do it just from a physical point of view and kind of the demand of it. But they wanted a disabled person. So I knew that I didn't have Henry's disability, but I also knew that to, the way they wanted to create the show was in rehearsals, we had a lot of conversations about it and about how we portray Man Henry and like how disabled we make him. And me and the dramaturg, Nikki Miles Wilding, fantastic person. She worked for Grey Eye for many years. She's a brilliant person, brilliant writer, brilliant director. If you've not met her before, but if you can, definitely get her on something like this. She'd be fantastic. Anyway, she's our dramaturg on the show, disabled person, and we had a lot of conversations with the writers about how we portray his disability because I didn't, even though I'm disabled myself, I didn't want to feel like I was putting on another layer of disability, but we had kind of a duty to tell the story and try and be authentic in that way. So it was a challenge to do that. But we decided, because Man Henry in the show, it kind of narrates the show, and it's from his point of view. We decided that he'd kind of reveal the injury at a later point. So there was a point in the show in which I shifted my physicality a little, not ridiculously, but a little to kind of mirror his injuries slightly. But we decided to kind of keep my physicality and my disability very true. And the whole point is it was kind of Henry's moment to be like, I'm controlling the narrative. And when I'm comfortable to share about my disability, I will. So that was the way we kind of worked it. So it was kind of a hybrid between Henry's disability and his physicality and my own, which I think struck a really nice balance. Because I was really conscious, I didn't want to play Henry. It felt weird to kind of put on a disability for me, even as a disabled person. So we kind of tried to find that balance of what felt right to do and what felt artistically served the story. So it was a big conversation, but hopefully we struck a balance that felt okay. And Henry seemed to be happy, so that was all we cared about. As long as the family thought we did it justice and the disabled community resonated in some way, then we did our job. So yeah, I think we did okay in the end.
Yeah, I didn't see the show, but I'm sure that it's great and it looks like a wonderful show. And just on one trailer, I saw this beautiful scene where you're flying in your wheelchair. And I just wonder, how was the scene made? Was it scary? Was it difficult to do?
Yeah, so it was just before rehearsals. We did, me and Johnny, who plays, just for context, for anyone listening or watching, the Little Big Things, I played the lead of Man Henry, but there's a decision from the creative team and the writers to have boy Henry, so pre-accident, able-bodied Henry, in the show, but we don't switch. We're on stage together all the time. And it talks a lot about kind of understanding yourself and your subconscious and battling with the past, which was a clever way to do it. So me and Johnny, who played opposite me, we did West End Live, which was a big thing at Trafalgar, where a lot of West End shows kind of come together. And it was our first outing as a company, and it was a bit of a marketing thing. And the director was there, and we came off, and he said, "Weird one, guys, but just wondered if you're okay with heights." And when we were like, not really, we both don't really like heights very much, but we didn't really hear any more of it. And then we were in rehearsals, and we got our call sheet through for the day, and said, we're going to take you to fly school. And we were like, I don't know what they're on about here. Like, why do we go to fly school? And it turned out that they wanted a visual imagery of kind of setting yourself free and being together in one. And the way they were going to do that was through aerial work, which was super exciting. So the way they did it, they had both of us on like harnesses or rigging in the theatre that was controlled externally by someone in the rig. But the way they did it for me is the whole of the second half, I had a full body harness on underneath my costume. So legs and kind of upper body, chest. And I had a jumper on to kind of hide stuff, but underneath I had a shirt that had a little hole in, and the carabiner that they clip the wire to was hooked from there. And what they did for safety is they had a rope, kind of a bit like a lap strap, that wrapped around my chair and clipped to the bottom of my chair and kind of held my chair. And that carabiner was attached to the one on my shirt, and then the one on the shirt was attached to a line. So both my chair and me were suspended. So if I, if the chair fell, then I'd still be hung up. So it was kind of doubly done to extra security. But yeah, even with all the safety precautions, it was a little bit scary just because of the height, and also because you can't really use your core in the air, and I haven't got the best core anyway, but you can't really, once you start spinning, because the way it works is my counterpart Johnny, who I played opposite, pushes me and I kind of spin in the air as I'm going up. So you can't really control how quick you're going in the chair. So it did take a little while to get used to it. And in fly school, me and Johnny were taken down early and fed biscuits and taken out for air because we both thought we were going to pass out. So it was a challenge, but once we got it sorted and got really used to it, it was such an amazing part of the show. And it really touched people. And it was also a part of the show that was not revealed before the first preview. So nobody knew it was going to happen. So when I went in the air for the first time, I think a lot of people were very surprised, but they had a great time. That was fun. But yeah, it was good.
Yeah, it looks really outstanding, even just when you saw it on the laptop, I can imagine. And also, I think that like the story about Henry Fraser, the big things, is very good, but still like quite conventional if you it. But when I saw your other show, The Puppy, yeah, it amused me so much because it like talks so explicitly on things about sexuality queerness, political topics, and everything. And when I saw it, I was like, oh my God, like finally I see something that I can refer myself to, because I stand so much for the right, like sexual representation of disabled people. So I'm really interested in how was it for you, like to have such experience?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I remember when it came through, and I was like, oh, that's quite a lot. And I was kind of like read the script, but it was like super interesting. And then I had like questions around kind of like the intimacy and how they were going to work, and then had like met with the intimacy coordinator, and she was like talking about the style of the show and what they wanted for it. And it just felt like the right thing to do, and it was really interesting playing with that kind of physical intimacy, and not even the act of it, but like the writing and having someone, a disabled person, within that dynamic,
Yeah.
and with that world was really interesting and got me excited to do it, because I think those stories are important and honest. So yeah, it was good. It was really interesting.
Yeah. And what can you say about the audience's acceptance? Like, have you received any feedbacks, comments about this show after that?
Yeah, I think, well, people really enjoyed it on kind of a really base level. But there were definitely comments about kind of like it was refreshing to see such like honesty on stage.
Yeah.
And I think the scenes were handled in a way where it was like, I think it wasn't overly naturalistic. They made the decision to make it quite melodramatic, because the play in its essence is a comedy, and they kind of wanted to play on that and make it kind of quite bombastic to kind of heighten the comedy. So I think a lot of people were, from responses, quite taken aback by that. And it was, yeah, some audience members, I think, were a little bit surprised at the content, because it was very honest, and there were very honest conversations about the industry.
Sorry, just for interrupting you, but I didn't see this show as well. So could you please tell something about the characters that you played in the show? Like, what is the plot?
Yeah, so the show is about two women who meet while they kind of meet while dogging. They find a one of them stumbles upon a dogging community, and I played one of the doggers at a memorial car park in London. And it's about those two, really centrally, two women who fall in love, and it's kind of about their relationship. It is revealed that one of the couple, that one of the women, is involved in kind of the adult industry, and it kind of discusses OnlyFans. It also discusses kind of consent, and the difficulties around that. Also talks about like freedom and class in the show. It's also based around, I don't know if you know about it, but a few years ago there was a protest about adult material and censorship in the UK. There was a ban that was put in place, based around what could and couldn't be shown in adult content, and there was a protest with people that were in the industry, and the way they protested was by outside Parliament. They did a mass face sitting protest, uh, where they did face sitting, and so the show's climax is about that, stand and their rights, and kind of a lot of conversations around that, which was really interesting. Also, within the show, my main character, Dave, was written as a wheelchair user. But then also I played a character called Bobby, who was one of the dogging couple's sons who stumbles upon it. And he wasn't disabled. He wasn't written disabled. But I doubled up. So there was a really interesting conversation about how we make that work, and whether we want his disability to be a thing, or not, because sometimes with disability, even if it's not written, it kind of adds extra depth and context that might change things. And in this situation, we decided not to have him disabled as well, just because of the content of the scene and his relationship.
So wasn't your main character disabled at first?
Yeah. So my main Dave was written as a wheelchair user.
Wow.
Which is really cool. And that also is what excited me about the show, like having someone that open and exploring in the way the character does, I think was really exciting to have those conversations and show disability in that light. Was really cool. And also it's just a really funny play. I mean, my character Dave, he's kind of jack of all trades, quite a working class. There was a lot of play around class, but quite a working class character in London. But it's discovered that he has kind of this secret side, that he is an author of erotic what is it? It's erotic crime novels. So there's a whole section where he reels off 26 spoofs of crime novels based around adult fiction, which is which is quite funny. So it was a really funny play and spoke really honestly about intimacy and relationships and politics, which was really cool.
Mm-hmm. In your view, how accessible is the UK theatre industry at all? Like for disabled people, and how to navigate the pursuing of your career?
Yeah, I think that's the thing. A lot of people talk about theatre and disability in the UK and say there needs to be more representation. I personally don't believe it's a lack of want from casting directors and casting teams because they're getting way more diverse than they were. I think it's a lack of access in theatres. That's the big problem, especially West End, where we were for Little Big Things at Soho Place.
So is it like the theatres are too old for adaptation?
Yeah, it's a lot to do with listed buildings and kind of ability to adapt buildings. So that is a big problem. I've been very lucky the theatres I've worked in that there's been enough access to make it work. But yeah, there's a lot of theatres that I can't use, which in turn limits my work, but also limits how often people see disabled people on stage, which is a shame. But it's getting better. Casting itself is getting more open. It's now the buildings that we've got to try and tackle, which is much a bigger topic. But hopefully it's going to start getting there.
I haven't been turned down for roles explicitly because of your disability, or someone ever told you that your disability is an obstacle for the role?
Never professionally, at least not to my face. There might be conversations that happen in audition rooms, but they decide not to because of my disability. Because unfortunately, that is kind of the climate we're in sometimes. But thankfully, I've never been told that myself. There were times where during school or pre-training, I was kind of said like, rightly it's a very difficult career, but it was kind of more pointed to me being like, we don't know whether you're going to manage this industry because obviously the industry is tough, but then you add disability on top of that. I think people consider it impossible. So there were times where I was told by teachers that they think that I wouldn't get enough grades to even train acting at university. There were barriers there initially, but I'm very proud and thankful that I overcame them and can work in the industry. But yeah, and I understand because it's tough. Like for anyone in the industry, in any sector, it's really difficult. And you add a layer like disability, it adds an extra challenge. But yeah, very proud that I've been able to make it a career, which is really cool.
Could you please tell something about how the process of creating, delivering, and promotion the show, is it rehearsals and after that some kind of like giving the shows period, and what does it mean for you like to be involved in all the process, and how long does it take?
Is that for is that for a specific show, or is that just generally?
Just generally,
Right.
I'm just asking about the process.
Yeah. Great. To be honest, it does depend. It kind of is show dependent, and sadly, it's a lot down to budget because the more time you spend, the more money they've got to pay people, and how more expensive things like rehearsal venues are. But generally, so I think the shortest rehearsal period I've had is probably about 3 weeks for a show. That's for kind of a show that's kind of up and running or doesn't have too much work that needs to be done to it. The longest I've had is for Little Big Things, which was 6 weeks, 6 and a bit weeks. But bearing in mind, there's also sometimes in rehearsal processes, before the rehearsal process, a bit like what you saw with Secret Sides of Us. There's workshops where they're kind of starting to find ideas. So for Little Big Things, which is probably the best example for process, I did 2 workshops for the show before it was greenlit and became a musical fully. So I was probably involved for the show for a year and a half. So we had kind of extra time to develop. So by the time we got into rehearsals, they were kind of a bit ahead of the time. But schedule wise, if we're saying on a 6 weeks, usually we're in Monday to Friday, sometimes half days on a Saturday, and it's usually 10 till 6 normally, with kind of breaks throughout the day. So that's usually the process. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's probably even difficult for you, like as a disabled person, to others. And also, once you've been chosen to be in the cast of this particular show,
Mm-hmm.
do you play it like frequently, for example, every year, or is it just one, like just one time event?
Mm-hmm. So it depends on the contract and the job.
Yeah.
Some jobs are quite short. So Secret Sides of Us, I was brought in for that week, so I had a week, and that might come back, might not. We obviously we don't know, but that was a week's contract. So my role for that time was that week. I've so it can be as short as that. It can be I've done TV shoots where I'm only needed for a day, so you do it on for a day, or an advert you might be there for a couple of days. But Little Big Things was ended up being quite a long contract. So we were in the West End in London for 6 months, and I was doing that 8 shows a week, Monday to Saturday with a Sunday off. So it kind of depends on the contract, and you know that when you sign it, they'll give you kind of a time frame and finances for that. But yeah, it depends on the job really. But generally, larger scale shows in theatre tend to be 8 shows a week.
Yeah.
Double on a Thursday, double on a Saturday, and then Sunday off.
Yeah. How demanding are you when you choosing? Or like at all, do you have as many invitations so you can choose, or is it like very often for you, so you're just taking all the roles?
Yeah, I mean the process was tiring. Um, I had a cover which was really good. So I had time. I had a allotted holiday, so I had a week's holiday. So only a week, but they could cover me for that week, and then also they had someone in place, the same person, if I was ill, so I was able to take days off if needed, to kind of recover and stuff. So there are things in place in shows to make it more manageable for me and others. Yeah.
Do you feel that disabled actors often get cast only in disabled roles? Um, uh, yes, it was kind of uplifting to see that your role in the show Poehali was
Mm,
not initially for disabled person, but
mm,
some kind of adapted role. But I suppose it doesn't happen in most cases.
mhm. Yeah, I think mainly the roles I get put up for are disabled roles,
Yeah.
just because I think the industry's still got a little way to go in terms of. I think theatre's better at it than TV and film are,
Mm.
because it's kind of the idea of theatre. You can kind of subvert expectations and get lost in the theatre of it all. So I'm lucky enough now that there's times where I get put in rooms where it's like a non-disabled character, but you kind of ask the audience to kind of go with it, which I think is really cool and I think needs to happen more. But film and TV, it doesn't really happen. I'm lucky. I'm getting a few more auditions now. I'm not getting them, but I'm getting auditions where I'm auditioning for non-disabled characters, which is really cool because that shows the industry is slowly improving. But it tends to be disabled roles is what I go for. And unfortunately, I mean, these stories are important and deserve to be told 100%. But unfortunately, I'd say 75% of the scripts I read are usually someone who's had some sort of injury. And the plot is based around like overcoming trauma and how difficult things are, and which is cool and needs to be talked about. But not every I think not every role needs to be about surviving and coping with terrible circumstances. I'd love to read some more scripts where there's a disabled character that just is like the neighbor from down the road and has a really normal life. That would be really cool, because there's a lot of like trauma. I feel there's a lot of trauma dumping in writing, where like, oh, they're disabled, so we have to make it part of the script that they've like got a really interesting background and have gone through a lot, which is valid and important. But I think it'd be really refreshing to see some more light-hearted disabled roles that aren't about the disability. It's always about the injury or the overcoming. But I'd love to just see a disabled person be in it, and it can be written as disabled, but they're just there, and they just happen to be disabled. But it's not about that. I think that's when we'll see real change. But yeah, unfortunately, it is a lot of disabled roles, which is great in a way, because I try and treat it for me as kind of my USP. It's kind of my unique selling point, and that's my difference that gets me in rooms. So for me, I'm okay with it because I'm a young actor who's working, and I'll take the work, quite frankly. But it'd be really cool to start seeing that change. And it's starting slowly, but hopefully it'll increase more and more.
Oh, that's great. I hope to see it more as well.
Thank you.
Going back to Poehali again, like the themes of sexual expression, boundaries, clearness were explicit in the show, and was it challenging to take part in this play emotionally for you? I mean, like showing the sexual content as a disabled actor. Was it challenging for people that surround you, or your family, for example, like in the context of those biases about disabled people,
I think so. I was kind of challenged by it, and it took me a little while to respond to it. I was kind of like umming and ahhing on whether I wanted to, and it wasn't just me who felt that. Actually, when we ended up being in the room, the able-bodied actors were kind of quite apprehensive as well, because the content is hilarious, but the content was quite honest. So we were all a little bit apprehensive. But when we met up with the intimacy coordinators, whose job it is in film and TV and theatre to kind of be an advocate for those scenes, and they very much choreographed them, that it was very safely handled, and we had lots of meetings about what we're comfortable with, how they want to approach it. So in the end, I felt comfortable, and it was kind of exciting to like have a challenge and play a character and perform in a way that is not really written much in disability. So I'd be lying if I didn't say I was apprehensive, but I think it was rewarding and was really fulfilling to be involved in and tell a story that was honest. I think not related to disability and intimacy, but I think obviously my family were like, just from a human point of view, they're like, will come support maybe, but I don't know if I want to like watch my son in that situation, which I think is absolutely valid. Disability or not, I think it's fair. But yeah,
have members of the family watched the show?
Yeah, so my parent didn't watch the show, and which I understand, and also I think they would have if we were in a different venue. We were in an incredibly intimate venue where there's like 3 rows deep, and I was like, you know what, I'm actually really glad that you didn't end up coming to this. But I did have family members and friends who came to see it, and I think they were kind of taken aback, but then also kind of like really glad that there's like content and shows out there that are like honest. And that like are willing to push boundaries and tell stories that are real and like honest, and which is great. And I think that's why I took the job, as I've said before. Just a story that was willing to like not sugarcoat it and not sugarcoat disability and intimacy, and kind of push the boundaries was really exciting. So yes, scary, but then for me as an actor, because I get so many auditions through, like scripts through that are quite similar, it was really exciting to have something that was a bit out of my comfort zone. And I think as an actor, I want to do those roles that kind of push me, because that's how you get better as a person in the industry. So I was, apprehensive, but very excited to kind of push myself.
So do you hope that your work challenges the tendency to desexualize disabled bodies?
Yeah, I think in the topic of the thing about sexualizing disability, it's interesting. I feel like the industry is kind of does both. It kind of under sexualizes, but then I think sometimes it kind of, I think, can over sexualize. I've read.
It's like the two sides of a coin.
Yeah.
Like we never have the ordinary approach to the sexuality of disabled people. We just have this asexualizing or fetishizing or something.
Yeah.
So
I've read some scripts. I've kind of gone like, I don't know why you're pushing. I understand why you're pushing the boundaries, but like, I don't think we need to go that far. Or like, I don't know. Sometimes it just doesn't feel. Some scripts, I think, I don't know if it feels necessary, and there does seem to be sometimes a heightened sense of sexuality and kind of like raunchiness and pushing the boundary when it's written about disability. And I'm not sure what that is. I don't know if it's curiosity or it's. I mean, there's definitely a want and a curiosity in being telling honest stories about disability, but I think it's a fine line, and I don't know where's too much and where's not enough. And I have read some scripts where I've kind of gone, I don't know if this is for me and if it serves the story. Like, is it just you just want to shock? And I don't know if I'm always up for just shocking because of it. Do you know, it's got to serve the story for me.
yeah. Do you have the vision of ideal script in your head, like that has the good representation of disabled body and sexuality of disabled people? Like, is it something in the middle, or like, what would this character be?
It's a big question. I don't know. I think it's, I don't know what the middle looks like, but I think something in the, well, is it something in the middle or is it, I think it starts off with the script and the story serving the purpose of the intimacy, or like if the story necessitates that you have to, I feel like the text has to back up what you're asking the character to do. I think there's been some scripts where I'm like, it kind of goes from 0 to 100, and I don't see why we're suddenly so sexual. But I think if the script is well written and it serves the story, then it's. I think that's where it comes from. I think if it's written well, then I don't think it should be a problem. But I think I struggle when it feels like sometimes intimacy and disability is kind of like shoehorned in, because it's like, oh, we should show that because we should. But I think it's got to serve the story. I think that's number one for me, because then it's honest, I think, and then it feels like you've earned it. Like if there's a build up and there's great characters, then I feel like it's important to show. But if it's just there because they feel like it should be there, then I think that's not why you should write sexual scenes or intimacy in for shows for disability. I think it's important and good that we're showing it, but I think it's got to be earned and it's got to feel warranted, I think. But honestly, what that looks like, I don't know. I think there's no perfect world in terms of a lot of things with disability in the industry. But I think it's getting there for sure, especially shows like Puppy. I think it was a great example of that. So.
Like from the roles that you had so far, what is your favorite role in terms of expressing yourself the most or relating the plot to your experience?
Yeah. I mean, I've been really lucky to do some really cool things. I think my favorite is Little Big Things, just because of it's the largest scale job I've done. It was in a field that I was never sure I'd do. Fell back in love with musical theatre, and also for an actor, the writing was just amazing. Henry's story and the journey he goes on is, for an actor, an incredible journey, because he's a really, really funny guy, and he lives life kind of with a real sense of fun and joy, but also, what he went through, and it's written in his autobiography, which is an amazing read. He went through some really difficult moments, which a lot of us do with a disability, but the show really showed it. So as an actor, the journey and the arc was kind of from here to there, and kind of, 1 minute I'm laughing, the next minute I'm crying, and it was just a pleasure to do. And I think playing a real person was an honor, to be honest. And having them, Henry was offered. I met him during rehearsals for the first time, and he told me he was offered to come into rehearsals and come and see the workshops and read the script and listen to the music. And on the most part, he refused. And he said, like, I trust you guys as actors and creative team to create the show and tell our story as a family. So the first time they saw the show was in opening preview. sat in the front row, and they watched their life on stage, which must have been a very scary thing. But I think it was like an honor to be able to like tell their story. And I, there were some things that maybe some disabled people think we could have done better. I think disability and actually just the arts is always up to personal preference. But I felt very proud that somewhere as mainstream as the West End, there was a disabled story in the West End.
Yeah.
And not only that, there were the casting was really accurate. So there was me, obviously playing Henry, but I had an offstage cover who's a wheelchair user. There was a character called Agnes, played by Amy Trigg, who was the physio. And Amy is an incredible actor. She actually won the Olivier for it. She's phenomenal. But she had an offstage swing, full-time wheelchair user. And there was also Henry's love interest in the show, character called Katie. And she was played by an amazing actress called Gracie McGonigal. And she is an actor with a limb difference. But that character was never written in as disabled. So, and also the choreography was included BSL, uses of British Sign Language. So there was a disability kind of thread through the entire thing. Whether written about or not, it was kind of really embedded. So it was a real honor and a pleasure to see disability shown in that light in a big scale. So yeah, in terms of achievement and what I feel like it could do for the industry moving forward, Little Big Things was an amazing thing. Yeah,
and in terms of your collaboration with the team of the big scenes, Little Big Things, how big was your impact, like in this show, to create the character, to change something in the plot? And did you actually do it?
I had, because it was a new show, a new musical, the writers were in the room all the time. And obviously, as a disabled person, I was kind of asked a lot of questions about the disability and how I wanted to approach it.
Yeah.
So I was very much given the freedom to kind of question things and find stuff out. And also Nikki, who I've mentioned earlier, our dramaturg, is a wheelchair user, and she was kind of advocating for it. So it was, I had space to kind of make changes and kind of find a way in it, which was really good. Also, which was really helpful, there's kind of this kind of slang slur term that kind of wraps around the industry, and like sometimes what shows can kind of slip into, which is the idea of like pity porn, which was a phrase coined by Nikki, and we tried very hard as a team, and the writers did, to kind of steer away from the pity and the inspiring nature. I mean, his story is inspiring, but we wanted to create a story that was honest. And talking about, you asked me about how much I had impact. I remember the second draft of the show. We did a workshop, and they changed some things, and Henry's journey was far too easy, and didn't mirror his autobiography. And there were times we don't really show it in the show, but I think he died or he lost consciousness like 9 times when he was first injured, and that's that's a lot to have that kind of struggling aspect. And there was a point in the script where I was like, we don't want to dwell on the difficulty of disability, but we need to show it as well. Like there needs to be moments where we go, this can be a bit difficult, and I really fought for more scenes of struggle and honesty, because also as an audience member, if we show his struggle, that means his payoff and recovery and what he went on to achieve in his life is so much richer and is as much more of a journey for an audience member. So yeah, I did fight for some more challenging scenes, which they were eventually happy to include, and Henry was fine with them. But I was like, I think, I've coped with my disability, but there are moments where there are days where it's really a bit crap. And I kind of wanted to show that. I think it's important. So that was the big change, was me fighting for a bit of honesty and a bit of grit, which I think we got in there in the end, which is really cool.
Yeah, excellent. And have you ever had some feedback that you received from disabled people about your roles or performances at any of them? Maybe something that surprised you.
I don't think I had anything that was like crazy in terms of feedback, but I did have a lot of people come to me at the stage door and have really honest conversations about kind of their lives and their disability and their experiences, and kind of how they were just surprised and proud that there was disability being talked about. And I think a lot of people feel very seen, even if it's not a disability they relate to. I think there's a lot of themes in the show about family and about dynamics and about recovery and about how you navigate that, that people really resonated with, which was super important. And actually, I had some really interesting conversations with non-disabled people that came to stage door, and actually early on some cast members where it was like, I really didn't. I've kind of taken things for granted a little bit, and I didn't realize the complete world of disability that is kind of so, in a way, so separate from everything else, that people were kind of taken aback and were like, I think in some way I will look at people differently, and I will change how I think. Which, as a disabled person, that's kind of all you want, is to like open people's eyes and go, you know, look at us. we're you don't stare, but look, and kind of, we're very normal and we've got stories to tell, and sometimes people need to learn. And the fact that people were going away from it being like, I feel like I've learned something, was really, really humbling and made me very thankful that I got to do the job. So yeah, there was a lot of people that talked to me, and I was like, oh, that's why I'm doing it. When people come up to you and they tell you stories and have very honest conversations about disability, and their experiences, it's like, wow, that's why. I mean, there was a day, I remember, Soho Place as a theatre is fully accessible. It's one of the first fully wheelchair accessible theatres in the West End. And there was a day where you can remove chairs really easily. Sometimes in theatres, disabled seats are a bit rubbish and a bit hard to come by. I'm sure you've experienced in the past. But yeah, there was a day where we got told by front of house that there was over 15 wheelchair users in, and like that number of disabled seats is like unheard of. Like I think the most I've seen in a theatre is maybe 5 seats of like wheelchair bays. But the fact that they took seats out and there were like 15 to 20 wheelchair users in one time, it was like, oh, I really felt like we're doing something and people are seeing us, and it's like, it's felt so special to have other people like myself in the theatre sharing it together, and it was, yeah, super special.
And I just wanted to ask you, what kinds of roles do you most want to play in future?
Great. I think there's a couple of answers. I think very simply, I just want to keep working. I think the dream is to just work as consistently as I can and just be able to my career doing this full time, which would be the dream. But in terms of roles, a couple of things. I think what we've talked about. I think playing more non-disabled roles, or roles that kind of push the boundaries, or roles that are written disabled but it's not about your disability, I think would be really cool. And I think that's when we'd see change in the industry. So that would be super cool. But in terms of a role, at university, I started studying Shakespeare. That's part of our training. And I love Shakespeare, and I love the use of language of Shakespeare. It's really cool. And I would absolutely love the kind of the dream role. I think I'd love to do something like an adaptation of Richard III. I think would be super cool. Obviously, he's a Shakespeare character that is written as a disabled person, well, was a disabled person. Obviously not a wheelchair user, but I would love to kind of find out how we play disability in that show and explore that. So that would be the dream, I think, to do Shakespeare and to do a character that Shakespeare wrote as disabled would be cool.
Would you like to play something from the classical stories, from like the characters from classical books, something like that?
I think so. I'd love to do that. I think I'd also Also because it kind of challenges expectation as well. If you play a classic character that isn't written as disabled, but kind of subvert it and maybe include the disability. I mean, for example, I did at university, as part of our training, we did a regional tour and we toured Julius Caesar. And I was lucky enough to play the lead character of Brutus, who obviously in the show kills Julius Caesar and is kind of a politician and a political man and is kind of power hungry. But our director made the decision to have me, without mentioning the disability, obviously in the Shakespearean text, have me play Brutus. And there was like this added extra layer of context and how he approaches stuff, and him being a politician with disability, it just added this like really interesting dynamic, which kind of, without it meaning to, it kind of heightened the stakes of the show. So I'd love to do that with more characters and kind of add some depth just by being disabled. Adding that layer to a character would be really cool. So hopefully get to do more of that.
Yeah, let's hope together. And how do you see the future of theaters? What is the fully accessible theater for you, and fully accessible roles and productions and etc.?
I think in general, I think it's improving. There's still got way to go, but I think it is improving. I think it's really difficult because I think now casting directors are looking for diversity. And I think disability is now becoming included in that, which is really cool. But our main issue is the accessible theatres. So I think that's the conversation that needs to happen next, is like how we make these theatres accessible to enable these stories to be told and to make it kind of more accessible, which is difficult because I don't really know what the answer is. But the answer is a lot of money. The answer is a lot of money.
Yeah, it's always down to money.
Yeah, it's always down to money. But I think that's the change, is if theatres become more accessible, then I think we'll see a lot more stories. But in terms of casting, film, TV, theatre, it is improving. And that's really exciting to see. I think if I trained, I graduated in 2020, but I think if I trained even 5 years before then, I don't think I'd have been in the position I am now. I think the industry really is shifting, which is exciting. But there's always going to be a way to go. But we'll one step at a time.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you so much for this conversation. It was wonderful.
Thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure. And nice to chat to you as well. Meet you properly. It's been really great.
No, thank you.